Hi guys, welcome back to the next installment on our Scriptable event series. So up until now we've been using standard events to create our gameplay, but today we're going to have a look at passing data through our events and how we can use that data through our event listeners. So first off, we'll take a quick recap on what we've created in our previous tutorials. So we hit play really quickly. We've created this basic gameplay where we can trigger our next sections. We can make our previous sections disappear, we can play some audio, and that's it. And if we go back, some basic housekeeping from our previous tutorial. So we go to our no return point. We did forget to add our bridge to delete it once it drops from the sky after 7 seconds. So we'll go ahead and find our delete method and add our bridge to it. That's it. And secondly, we have these trigger zones and we have an effect attached to them, which is our focus, our point of interest. If we take a look at our no return points, we don't actually need any points of interest, so we just delete the or disable, if you wish, the effect, and that is it. And we'll go ahead and rename this checkpoint audio to just scene audio source, and we can use this for all of our one play audios. So let's go ahead, we'll save that and we'll get cracking. So first thing we need to do is, well, for this tutorial what we're going to do is create some collectible items. Now we all know what collectible items are. They're health packs, they're ammo, they're power-ups, they're all this sort of stuff. So we're going to go ahead and create a health pack essentially. So first thing we'll do is create a 3D game object. Name it, just give that a name of health pack. Go over to our inspector. We need to use this trigger, and we also need to just add in materials. Come down to materials folder, or if there's not one there, create one. And we create our first material and we call it health pack. So very simple, and give it a green color. Let's add that to our health pack. Bring it into focus. So there we go. And we just increase the scale to maybe 1.5. Okay, so that should be good for that. And what we want to do with this then is go ahead and create our first script, which will be to our scripts folder. We create a subfolder and we call that Collectibles, and we create our first script, which will be a collectible class, which we can inherit from collectible. And let's just increase that. So what do we need this class to do? Well, this is going to be our parent class, and all we're going to do in here is create a reference to some scriptable event. We're going to hold a value, which is going to be a float value, which is going to represent the value of our collectible, in this case a health pack. And then we just want to set up some sort of a collision detection system. So we'll go ahead and add a serialized private scriptable float event, as we're going to be passing a float. Call this collected, uncollected, something simple, and then we'll add a private float value, and we set up our collision now. Provide on, we just go to on trigger enter. And what do we want to do in here? Well, we just want to see if our player has collided with this medical pack for this collectible, we will do something. So what will we do? Go if other we'll do a game object get component. We'll use our player tag we created earlier. It's just called player, and what we're going to do is we're just going to return. Better do a not. So if we don't collide with our player, or if our player hasn't collided with our collectible item, we're going to return. If we have, all we're going to do is invoke our scriptable float event. The only difference between this time and previous times is now we need to pass some data, and the data we need to pass is a float, because it's a float scriptable float event should I say. So let's pass the data, which is our float value, which represents the value of the Medipack. Because we're going to be colliding with this collectible item, we want it to destroy once we've picked it up. So let's create the functionality for that. So just like we did in the trigger zone, we'll add a simple bool value, and we call it destroy. I'll call it destroy on collected. Destroy on collected, and we'll just replicate. There we go. We'll do not destroy on low on collected. We'll return. Oh God. Return. And if we do this, choose destroy on collected, we want to destroy the game object. So this just gives us the option to destroy it if we choose to. So these. So I think that's everything for that. Yep. So we'll go ahead and save that. We'll add it to, or before we do that, we will actually need to create a child class, and this is going to be our health pack. Health pack is open, and not going to be any code in here, just this point. And we inherit from collectible, and that's that. And if we wanted to add more collectibles, we'd add ammo kinds, and we just create them the same way. So there's our collectible. We'll go ahead and add our collectible pack to our health pack game object. Now we're in a position to create our first float event. So let's go ahead and do this. We come down to our events, our scriptable data folder. We will create a folder, and we're going to call it float. Float events, just keep things organized, and we'll go ahead and create our first float event. Come to our asset menu, event asset, and find our scriptable float event. So we're passing a float, and we're going to give it a name of collectible on maybe collected health pack. It's a bit long, but that should do. We'll add our event. We'll give our health pack a value of maybe 25, and we want to destroy on collected, and I think that is that. So we'll go ahead and just create a prefab. From that, grab our health pack, drop it into our prefabs folder, and there's our prefab set up. So that is that. Next thing we need to do is add our player health. So we go up to our scripts folder, create a player health class. We find our player, compile. Once you find our player, add our health, player health, open it up, and we'll go ahead and add our code. We'll open up our health class. So once we do that, all we're going to need is a serialized field, place to store our health value. So it's going to be a float, and we'll just call this health. It's just a health value, and so next we need our public method, which we're going to use to update our player health, and call this update health, and we're going to receive in a parameter, and we're just going to call this maybe increment. And how will we use this? So we'll just use a matf.clamp. So we want to clamp our health value, and we want to use our health value. We want to increment it by our increment amount, and we'll go ahead and clamp this between maybe a max value. And we haven't created this yet. We'll go ahead and do that now. So we'll go serialize field, private, float, and max value. We just add debug.log so we can get some feedback, and we just call that health. Player health, and add in our health variable, and that's that. So when we pass in our health value from the health medical pack we're going to create, we've just created, so we pass in the value, which is 25 in this case. We have our health, we're going to use the health pack, and then we're going to receive in the player's health, we're going to receive the increment amount, which is going to be the 25 that we receive from the health pack, and we're going to add it to our health, and we're just going to give us some feedback in the console, and we're also going to clamp it to a value, we'll say 100. So we go back to our player health component, we say our starting health will be something like 50, our max value would be 100, don't want it to go any higher than that. So what have we got now? So we have our float event, we have our invoking class, which is our health pack, and now we just need to create our listener so we can carry out our instructions. So up until this point, to add a listener, we've come up to the menu, we've come down here, and we've added it from our menu. But in this instance, we're going to do something slightly different, and we're going to add it to our player game object, because you can add them to game objects in the scene as it's a mono behavior. So let's go ahead and add our float event listener. I just want to move this up the stack. This is just to help with organization. So if we go ahead anyway, we have our float event listener. What do we want to do? Well, we need to listen out for an event, which is the float event we just created. Now let's add an instruction. So what do we want to do once this event is invoked? Well, we want to update our player health. So how do we do that? Grab our player health component. Let's go find this player health, and we pick our public method. Now you may notice there's two options here. There's a update health down here where we would manually input 25, it would use this 25, or if we use this dynamic float section, we have the update health, and what this does is uses the value that we've passed through our invoke method, which is the value of the health pack. Here we go, use that 25 through the event listener, and we're going to pass it into our method, which we have here. So this now becomes a 25, and we're going to update it. So we press play now. So let's go ahead, and there we go. So everything's working as expected. The health pack has deleted, our health has been updated from 50 to 25. So that's all good. So what else would we need here now? You know, something, maybe some sort of audible feedback. So go ahead and add we'll do health collected audio, and we'll add a float listener to the scene, and here we go. Just add that down here. So we have our float event, and all we're going to do is listen out, and we're going to play a sound. So let's grab our float event. Let's add an instruction. What we want to do here, we simply want to play a sound. Grab the audio source, play one shot, and we'll find a audio clip. Go with item. So very simply, we should now have some audible indication that we've had a collision. Now we just check our player. We can see our health is 50. The starting health is 50. So let's go ahead and have the collision. We've picked it up. We've collected our health. So we now 75. So next thing we might want to do is add some sort of a UI to give us a visual indication. So let's go to our UI divider and we'll add a UI. We'll call it, we'll add a text mesh pro. Give it a length of a width of 300. Sorry, clamp that to the top left corner. So for game view, text should be green. 50, 50, 60, something like this. Oh, that's good. And next we'll create a component, a simple, we call it a collectible UI component, and we will add that to our text. We'll just rename it to health text. So we'll just give this a better name. We'll call it health txt, health text. Add our collectible UI component and go ahead and open it up. So remove this, don't need any of that, we'll make it slightly bigger. So what we need here, well, first off we're going to need a reference to our text mesh pro, so it'll be private text mesh pro GUI, and we'll just call that text. What else would we need? We need serialized field, private string. Just going to set some sort of prefix text so that we and we'll have a starting value, which would be starting UI value, which would be a float, and we'll call it starting value, and we'll just track our current health value. So we go a float, we'll call this current, just call it current value. Set that to 1, so that'll be that. Next thing, we need a public method which is going to handle our UI update. So we'll go ahead and call it a maybe update health UI. Yeah, that's update health UI should do. And again, like our player health component, we're going to need to take in a value, and the value parameter is going to be a float, and we're going to call it increment. We're going to set our text to equal our prefix. Our prefix is basically just going to be, if we have different collectibles, we can call it, this would be the prefix, it would be health, then the value, coin, then the value, and so on. So that's all this is. It's nothing fancy, very simple. I'm going to do a mat F, and we're going to clamp it again should we need to. So like before, we'll do the current value. What do we call that? What did we call that? Current value. So our current value is going to plus equals our increment, and we need to clamp this if we should need to do so with a max value, and we'll create that max value just now. Serialized field, private, float, max value, and that's that. Okay. And our next step then is we're just going to call this one time. We'll create a private void start, and we'll do it slightly different. We'll use and we'll call this method one time update health, and we'll pass in our starting value, which will be the 50. Pass in our starting value, which will be the 50, and that's that. So what should happen here is on start, our text should be updated using the update method to the starting value, which is 50. And every time you have a collision with a collectible item, it should update it by the incremented amount which is passed through the event. So it's all simple enough stuff. So we just populate our fields. Add our text mesh pro. Our prefix is going to be, in this case, health. Starting value will be 50, because that's what we set in the player health, and our maximum value will be 100. And just like we did in the player health, we're going to add a listener to carry out some set of instructions, a float listener. Open up the stack just below our collectible UI. I'm going to grab a reference to our health pack event, add an instruction. What instruction do we need? Well, we know we just want to update our UI, so we find our collectible UI. Again, we'll go up to the dynamic float section because we want to use the parameter that's being passed through our scriptable float event, update health UI, and that's that. Let's go ahead and hit play then and see how this all marries together. And as you can see, our health UI has gone and updated. And if we check our player, that should be updated too. And very quickly, if we go back into the scene, we can go and add a few more. So go and add a few more health packs around, and we can pick them up as we move through the scene. And we add another one. I'll give these slightly different values, so we'll give it a value of 10, and perhaps this one could be a value of 5. So if we hit play now, we have different medi packs to pick up, or health packs should I say. So let's go. Our health should be 75, yep, and it should be 85, excellent. And if we just down here, we can see we're being updated correctly in line with the health UI. And we grab the last one, which is 5. 90, perfect. So if you'd enjoyed this and it's been of help for you, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and don't forget to grab your copy of the Scriptables package.